this passage here on the screen was all about capitalism and how certain companies indulge in malpractices or accounting discrepancies which have been recently exposed and which have a huge implication on international capitalism and have also further repercussions for the future, might have repercussions for the future. Now, moving on to the first question here for this particular passage, the question I wanted to know that there are shady and unsustainable accounting practices followed by some of the corporate companies, and what do these such malpractices show? Now, the answer to this particular question is option A. Inflating earnings and hiding debt improperly are routine as far as some companies are concerned. Where does this say? Where is this mentioned? Or where does the passage say this? Here, towards the very first paragraph itself, it says that there are companies which just happen to slip in normal expenses as capital expenses, and then they remove them from the profit and loss account. There are important flows of finance which are not recorded at all, sometimes just disappear from the balance sheets. Overall, what this is mentioning is, what the author is mentioning here in the first paragraph is the accounting discrepancies or malpractices which are followed by certain companies. And it says here that in other cases, accounting discrepancies include understatement of interest payments, fictitious investments, simply taking out cash out of employees' pensions and social security funds. So all of those things, they are pretty routine, as he says. He also says that in the second paragraph, which is the main part here, and the indications are that these malpractices are not just one-off mistakes, they're not rare cases, but have been going on for some years, suggesting that even auditors are not doing the job properly. So that is what suggests, as we saw in the question here, that answer A has to be the correct option A has to be the correct answer. Now, what about point B, which says the apparent collapse of even minimal ethical accounting norms has spelled doom for international capitalism? No, this has not been mentioned. There is a mention of minimal ethical accounting norms, but not that this has spelled doom for international capitalism. It does not say that in the paragraph. Option C says that whatever regulations have so far been in place have proved rather inadequate in monitoring and regulating accounting malpractices. No, rather the passage very points out to the fact that there has been an expose of such financial malpractices. So we cannot come up to this option which says that there has been inadequate monitoring. See, this is where it says that they have been in the last several years been exposed, even though only recently, but then there has been an expose of financial malpractices, and that is why we cannot take option C, that this is what accounting malpractices show. So anyway, we know, and of course then the answer cannot be all of the above. The answer has to be, for this question, option A. The answer to this question is clear as day. The question wants to know the revulsion phase of the financial cycle is usually accompanied by what? Now, if I take you back to that part of the paragraph where it has the answer straight away, this is where it is. Let's read from here. It says, thus, while many of the financial malpractices have been going on for several years, they have been exposed only recently as the economic slowdown and the stock market bear trend have fed into each other, right? So the stock market bear trend and the economic slowdown, they have fed into each other. That's what he says. There has been an expose of financial malpractices, and all of this, he says, this is the most important part here, and he says that this is characteristic of the revulsion phase of the financial cycle. So that's where we have the answer, and that's how we can mark it. And we know that the answer for this question, which wants to know what is a revulsion phase usually accompanied by, why do I keep saying phase anyway, but then the answer to this question has to be the exposure of malpractices that have been going on undetected for years. So the answer to this question is option C. This particular question wanted to know the tone of a phrase used in the very last sentence of the last paragraph of this passage. it says not only do they allow and even encourage. Wait, let me take you back to that part in the passage. Here it is. Not only, the last line, if you can see it there on the screen, it says not only do they allow and even encourage creative accounting, they are prone to the worst forms of insider excesses. Now, who is this talking about? Uh, if you go back here, it says the current spate of scandals in the US shows that capital market based systems, so it's talking of capital market based systems, that these can be even more problematic as than has been thought to be. Then it says not only do these systems allow and even encourage creative editing. Now this is what, you know, we can put in quotations mark, because this is the phrase that we are trying to focus on. Now, what does this mean, creative and accounting? And then it goes on to say they are prone to the worst forms of insider trading, that not only do they encourage creative accounting. Now, had you read the passage, you would have clearly understood here that the word creative has been used sarcastically, because the word creative here means unethical, isn't it? It says not only do they allow and even encourage unethical accounting malpractices, basically, but these systems are also prone to the worst forms of insider excesses. This is what, as per the author, what raises a huge question on capital markets around the world. So this is why, since creative has been used synonymously to mean unethical or malpractices, those kind of accounting practices, the wrong ones, that is why the author is being sarcastic here. Going back to the question, we know that the answer to this question now has to be option A, which is sarcastically, not melodramatically, not critically, not to suggest horror. It could have been, people might think that it could be melodramatic, he's being melodramatic here, but no, it's a simple example of sarcasm being done here. Melodrama would probably mean that he would use a lot of high flowing words and stuff like that to explain something, but excuse me, but no, that's not the point. It has to be sarcastic here. That's what the answer to this question is. What about the theme of the passage? A reading of the passage shows us very absolutely clearly that the passage is about these revelations which have come up in recent times about the malpractices which have been going on in the financial sector, and how this points out to, for instance, there was this example of this company called Enron, and how this points out to the rot which has been happening on the inside in international capitalism, and how this also has future implications for, let's say, the international capital market. Now, this is why all of what I mentioned right now, which makes up the theme of the passage, has been mentioned in option B. See, it says there is a sudden flurry of revelations. Yes. Of what? Of the apparent collapse of minimal accounting norms. Yes, even to the minimalistic point, accounting norms have collapsed. There's no scene of, let's say, ethical treatment with these norms. And then it says this has been recently brought to light, as we just used the word revelation, specifically about companies like Enron, which used to be seen as a huge symbol of the international capitalist market. But now this, what it shows is that there on the inside it is all being eaten up. Let's say there is a rot in international capitalism. Yes, that's what is also mentioned in the this particular option, and this has several implications for the future. Yes, that all of it, these points have been discussed in the passage. This is the theme of the passage, right? That's what we know. Now, A says that it is clear that a slowdown in the economy is likely to trigger. No, the slowdown in the economy is not likely to trigger off financial schemes. That is not is what is triggering off financial schemes. The financial schemes have already been there, and that is what has led to a slowdown in the economy, right? That's what we know of. What about C? It says that companies like Enron, which were seen as potent symbols of aggressive capitalism, yes, they were seen as potent symbols of capitalism, but then it says that they are now symbolic of breakdown of international capitalism. Yes, that too. But is this because of the sudden flurry of revelations involving mass manipulation of accounting books? See, the point is, this whole option may be true, yes, but then it's only a mere point or an example through which the author in the entire passage is trying to get to another, let's say, larger picture. And he's trying to draw a larger picture through the example of Enron, and that is why this option C cannot be taken as the entire theme of the whole passage. So that is how we know that. Okay, what about even option D? Let's discuss that. It says new capitalism is as bad as its predecessor. No, there is no claim towards that in the passage. That's why we know that the answer to this question has to be option B. That is the theme of the passage. This passage is about this psychologist, experimental psychologist called Lyubomirsky, and how she has been investigating the possibility of lasting happiness, what leads to lasting happiness, and whether happiness at all can be lasting or not. Now, moving on to the first question related to this passage, it says the author cites the example of lottery winners in order to support which one of the following. Now, the answer to this question has to be option C. And why is it option C? Let's go back to the paragraph. It says option C says that happiness is seldom sustained through materialism. Yes, it's mentioned here in the passage. Right here at the very onset, it says that the classic example of such hedonic adaptation comes from the 1970s study of lottery winners who a year after their windfall ended up no happier than non-winners. So it says that people who did not win the lottery a year later, even the winners were the same in the level of happiness, let's say, as the non-winners. And that's why it says here that we tend to adapt, quickly returning to our usual level of happiness. Even if we are specifically happy at a certain juncture in life, we usually return to our usual level of happiness, and that's why the example of the study of the lottery winners. So that's why we know that for this first question, the answer has to be that the lottery winners example has been used to support point C, which says that happiness is seldom sustained through materialism. The next question, this particular one on the screen right here, wanted to know that in the context of happiness, which one of the following factors is not mentioned in the passage? Now, had you read the passage, you would have found out that the answer to this question has to be D, which is unintentional activity. All the three have been mentioned. Intentional activity has been mentioned, not unintentional activity. Let me take you back to that part in the passage where it mentions all of these. See, we have the three options, which are genetic set point, individual circumstances, and picking up the right goals, right? Let's see whether they are there in the passage or not. Right here is we have the three so here you have genetic set points, which have been mentioned, that this is one of the reasons or behind happiness. Then it also says that here's the mention of picking up the right goals. See, it says that some people were assuming you can affect happiness if you pick the right goals. That's where it says that right there. And then it also says, see, half the pie is genetic set point, as I mentioned earlier. And then it also says that what determines happiness is also the smallest slice of the pie chart which they had formed, and which is circumstances. So all three are mentioned. And then what again is mentioned is the remaining 40%, which is here in the next slide, which is intentional activity, not unintentional activity. So that is why we know that the answer to this question has to be D. This is one factor which has not been mentioned. The question reads, according to the passage, which fact does the author choose to support the theory of increasing happiness? The answer to this question is none of the above, which is option D. How do we come up to none of the above? Now, for instance, in option A, it reads, the increase in research directed towards this subject is comforting. This whole option can be said to be incorrect, because there is no mention that there has been an increase in the research towards finding the absolute cause of happiness, or towards finding whether happiness can be lasting or everlasting or not. Then it says happy people attract more friends. I would want you to take, I want you to take you back to that part in the paragraph where he says, I'm sorry, she says, the author, about Lyubor. See, right here in this particular paragraph, it says that finding out that individuals with strong social ties are more satisfied with their lives than loners, for example, begs the question of whether friends make us happier or whether happy people are to us, more likely to, let's say, seek and attract friends. So it's still a question which has to be researched. It's not a fact, and certainly not a fact that has been used to support the theory of increasing happiness. So we can very well eliminate happy people attract more friends, this B option. Again, going back to that same paragraph, the next paragraph here mentions that Lyubomirsky uh, did not see or rarely sees her patients. See, it's here in this particular paragraph. Okay, this part. See, it says, to this day, she rarely sees her studies participants. I'm sorry. They do most exercises out in the real world and answer detailed questionnaires on the computer, often from home. And to access subjects' efforts and honesty, she uses several cross checks, such as timing them to complete the questionnaires. Now, it says that she rarely sees these participants, not that she does not see them at all, as is suggested through option C, which says that she does not see her studies participants at all, for that matter. So none of these can be taken. The answer for this question is none of the above. Option D is the correct answer to this last question of the passage, which says, which of the following is in line with Lyubomirsky's views regarding happiness? The answer is that happiness can lead to an effervescent and satisfied life. Where does this say? Where does the passage say this? Now, this is the part here where there have been conclusions which have been made about what Lyubomirsky says about the working definition of happiness. See, right, it's right here. She says that the working definition of happiness is a joyful and contented life, and this gets at both the feelings and judgments necessary for overall happiness. So this is the point about what Lyubomirsky says about happiness. She says that happiness can lead to a joyful and satisfied life, and this is the answer to this particular question, which is option D.